At this place in history, we're in Burlington with Executive Director of the Vermont Historical Society, Steve Perkins. What are we doing at Vermont Pub and Brewery today?
Well, we're going to go try some beer, first of all, but we're going to talk to Jeff Baker, who's author of a new book on brewing in Burlington about kind of the history of what happened here and especially the resurgence of beer in Burlington.
So Jeff, Burlington is known for its great breweries nowadays, but we were talking about in our last segment how that wasn't always the case and there was prohibition for a long time. Can you summarize that for us?
Yeah, Prohibition hit Vermont in the 1850s, much earlier than Federal Prohibition, and actually Vermont went wet again in 1903 and then snapped dry again in 1920, so it really messed with the brewing industry. Burlington went about 100 years without a brewery.
Wow, and so then picking up when that ends, when was that and how did we get back into being such a beer capital?
Yeah, so Burlington went from 1933 to 1988. After Federal Prohibition, 1988 was when Vermont Pub and Brewery opened, which is where we are right now. Greg Noonan and his wife Nancy had to change laws to open a brew pub. It was a new concept in the Northeast. They were happening out west, but they had to work for 3 years with the Vermont legislature to get a series of law changes so that they could manufacture beer on the site and then sell it to you on the site. They worked with State Representative Bill Mayers and Peter Clavell to get those laws changed, and then Governor Madeline Kunin signed them in. So there's this interesting thing that happened because there was this 100-year gap where all the brewing traditions, if you will, kind of got lost. So the brewers who were coming in 88 and then thereafter really had a blank slate. You know, you have bigger cities like Milwaukee, which have a very, German brewing tradition, and that tradition stuck. Whereas here in Burlington, it was fair game to brew English ales or German beers or Belgian beers. Something that Vermont Pub and Brewery really got on board with was, these English styles and these Belgian styles that, the Vermonters hadn't seen before.
So I've heard that Vermont Pub and Brewery was responsible for even creating a new style.
That's right. A brand new beer style was invented here in Burlington at Vermont Pub and Brewery. It ended up becoming called the Black IPA. It was 1994, and it was Glenn Walters was brewing here, who owns the Three Needs now. And working with Greg Noonan, he came up with this dark, bitter IPA. It was the first brewery in Burlington, and so it became, in a way, a training ground and a proving ground where people would come. You also get John Kimmick, who is at the Alchemist now. He brewed here for many years. And part of that was Greg's was a teacher and a writer. He literally wrote the book on beer and for many styles that homebrewers use, and then also professional brewers.
And you co-authored a book on the history of brewing in Burlington, right?
That's right. Adam Krakowski and I wrote a book called Burlington Brewing, A History of Craft Beer in the Queen City. So it took us about 2.5 years to do all the really hard research. We had to really dive in deep. And,
research.
That's right. And we went from 1800s all the way through 2018. The current brewery scene, there's 11 breweries in the city of Burlington.
Cheers to this place in history.